So I've talked about it before, but I am going to talk about it in this video while I draw a picture of Samael. And the playback on my end isn't quite working right in the editor that I'm using, so I'm just gonna hope that it actually works right in the video, and I'll test that when I export this. But anyways, I was an atheist. I was an atheist for a very long time. I was an atheist for at least 10 years. I was an atheist for the entirety of my teens, and I was a Christian in childhood and then deconverted. And when I was deconverted, because I was at first raised evangelical Protestant Christian, when I was deconverted, I was then raised anti-theist type of atheist. And I personally do not actually think that anti-theism and atheism are the same thing. I do think that they are distinct things. I believe all anti-theists are atheists. Not all atheists are anti-theists. The same way that all evangelicals are Christians, but not all Christians are evangelicals. It's a similar distinction. It's like a subcategory, essentially. And neither Christianity nor atheism was right for me. Both were actually expressly damaging and destructive to my life. For me, in my own personal life, the form of atheism that I was raised under was just as, in my opinion, racist, transphobic, sexist, and ableist as the form of Christianity I had been raised in was. And when I was atheist, the form of it I was under, anti-theism, I was literally taught to fear and hate all religious people. I was literally taught that all religious people are equal to Christians and Christian nationalists, and that all religious people are a threat to my safety, well-being, and survival, are beneath me, and are bad people, and are essentially, I was taught to dehumanize them and see them as less human than me. And the problem is that not only was I mean, obviously that in and of itself is a problem, but at least to me, I think that's a problem if you're being taught to believe that an entire group of people is evil. I think that is inherently problematic. But along with being taught that, I was also additionally taught that not only was I taught that all religions are equivalent to Christianity, which I don't think is true historically or presently. I think that is a hugely gross oversimplification of people and groups of people. But I was also taught that anyone who believes in spirits or gods or anything outside of atheism is delusional, is like clinically delusional and psychotic. I was raised to believe that anyone who has any sort of views outside of materialism, essentially, is just delusional, destructive, and deceiving themselves and others. And I don't agree with that anymore, obviously, but that is how I was raised. That is what I was raised to believe for the entirety of my teen years. And when I was a teenager, I was really, really deeply suicidal. I was suicidal to the point that I was self-harming, that I was beating myself up, and I'm okay talking about this. I was also cutting. And it got to a point where I was so suicidal that I was taken to a group for self-harming teens, and I was in that group taught like different essentially harm reduction techniques. So things you can do that will be less permanent than like cutting or beating yourself up. Essentially, harm reduction techniques is things that doctors will teach people who are self-harming or who have other forms of addiction. Self-harm itself is an addiction, but it's essentially lessening that addiction so that in time that person can choose to recover when they are ready for that. And so essentially it's minimizing harm. It's harm reduction. And I happen to know that my suicidal ideation was directly tied to me being at that time a hyper-masked autistic person who didn't know I was autistic, a hyper-masked DID system who didn't yet have the language or know that I was a DID system yet, and I didn't know what was going on with me, and I also know that being in the closet, being in the gender closet, and also in the sexuality closet at that time, all played a very major role in why I was very suicidal. And the form of anti-theism I was raised under was teaching me that who I am is just deserves to die, essentially. That who I am is completely unacceptable, is just delusional, that who I am doesn't really exist, and is just, you know, at the time, the false diagnosis I was being raised under, they thought I was bipolar. And because they thought I was bipolar, they would just say, did you take your medicine today? Whenever I was feeling upset about anything, did you take your medicine today? You know, if I was going through anything. So my feelings didn't matter, who I was didn't matter, my autonomy didn't matter. I was essentially just a fucking slave to my dad and a servant to the family system I came from, and taught that I don't matter. My humanity doesn't fucking matter. And unless I can conform to abject materialism, then I'm just bad, essentially, is what I was taught. And I was taught that material reality is the only thing that exists. Mind is just an extension of material reality. All our thoughts and who we are is just chemicals in our brain, right? And because they thought that I was broken for being disabled, they thought that if they just alter the chemicals in my brain, it would fix me. So, you know, they determined that I'm broken for being disabled, and the solution was to put me on a bunch of medicine to try and fix me, right? And make me normal, make me conform. And eventually I realized that all of this is a bunch of fucking bullshit, that anti-theism is just as transphobic, ableist, and white supremacist as evangelical Christianity is. And so I got the fuck out of that, and at 20 I started practicing witchcraft, and I started to really question if maybe atheism wasn't right for me. Around 19, well, really between the ages of 16 to 19 is when I was questioning if maybe atheism wasn't where I belonged, but I didn't know, so I just stuck with it. Around 20 is when I started practicing occultism and witchcraft. And at 20, I summoned a jinni using a ritual that with my sister, that I performed with my sister, who grew up in the same environment as me. And after successfully, in our case, summoning a jinni, that was the day I stopped being agnostic and started being an omnist. After that, I started practicing sorcery, demonology, and I started to study anything and everything I could involving the occult. And I found from the very beginning of my witchcraft journey that for whatever reason, and I actually have a few ideas of why this might be, deities and spirits specifically involving Mars energy and involving the symbolic qualities of Mars struck me the strongest and fit me the strongest and impacted my life the strongest. And people hearing that, they might think that I'm like a fire sign, but it's the opposite. I'm actually a water sign. Not that I think it really matters what astrological sign I am or whatever, because that's not my area. That's not my area of focus in the occult. But for me, I fucking needed Mars energy, and I needed to work with deities and gods and spirits involving Mars energy, because not only was my first truly significant spiritual encounter in a summoning ritual through the aid of a god that is one of the gods of Mars, King Alamar, but also because at that time in my life, I was fighting through and overcoming and escaping my primary abuser. And as a result of that being essentially what led me to occultism and sorcery and to becoming a sorcerer and wizard in the first place, I did my wizard's initiation ceremony on New Year's of 2023. For me, I needed Mars energy because Mars is the energy of revolution, is the energy of fighting, is the energy of fury, of passion, of resistance, of rebellion, of essentially the inner war that I had been going through for a long time, defeating and overcoming and getting the fuck away from my primary abuser, who in my case was my dad, was what I needed. Was Mars energy, was the symbolic connotations and qualities of Mars, and connecting to the gods and spirits and the part of myself that symbolically represents these things completely changed the entire trajectory of my life. It changed me from being someone who was formerly an anti-theist to now a very firm and solid theistic Satanist and demonolator and sorcerer. And it helped me to progress to a state where I can now take care of myself, defend myself, help myself, and be more open-minded and compassionate to people of different walks of life, of different religions, of different faiths, and of different belief systems and lack thereof. And I think that for me, my sorcery and my demonolatry is something I have used to balance out the destructive parts of my own psyche as a DID system, to help heal my own trauma, and to explore my own psychology and balance out myself in a way that in the last 5 years I've helped myself more through my own occultism and my own self-built spirituality as a chaos magician than doctors did in fucking the 10 years when I was just listening to what everyone else was telling me and just listening to them say that everything is just material reality and just chemicals in your brain, and then none of the fucking drugs they were putting me on did shit because it was all for a false diagnosis anyways. And even when I started to realize what I actually have, it still didn't fucking work for me. But for me, occultism fucking worked. So obviously I'm going to be spiritual and I am going to believe in spirits and jinn and demons and angels and satans and whatever the fuck else if that actually worked for me and the shit I was raised under did not. And this is why I think that this whole idea that, oh, anyone who's just spiritual or religious is just evil is fucking bullshit. It's fucking bullshit. It's honestly just as evil as what the fucking evangelical Christians are doing with their Christian white nationalism, which is essentially just rebranded Zionism of we're the only true one special people and everyone else doesn't matter. Well, atheists have a form of that too, and it's anti-theism. It's we're the only people who know how the world really works and everyone else is just delusional. And that excludes fucking a fuck ton of people. That excludes millions of people. And if you're really so fucking self-centered that you think you alone hold all the answers of the universe, you alone know everything, and everyone else is just deceiving themselves, it doesn't matter what belief system you follow or lack thereof, you're a fucking asshole.